Hi, I'm Ken Martin, the DFL Party Chair. Thanks for tuning in to our weekly message, The Chair's Corner. Last week, people across the country celebrated the Supreme Court's decision to uphold President Obama's Affordable Health Care Act. This means thousands of Minnesotans and millions of Americans will get the security they deserve. Because of the work of our Democratic leaders, no American will ever be denied care or charged more because of a pre-existing condition. Students are able to stay on their parents' insurance until they are 26, and hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans will save billions of dollars on prescription drugs. This is truly a victory for the American people. Today, I am honored to welcome a great DFL leader, a friend of mine, a friend of Minnesotans who has been standing up for middle-class working Minnesotans in Washington, Congressman Keith Ellison. Representative Ellison represents residents of Minneapolis in the 5th Congressional District. Keith played a critical role in getting health care reform passed and has continued to be a tremendous leader for hardworking middle-class families. He has also been a strong opponent of the voter ID amendment and the obstacles it would create for hundreds of thousands of Minnesota voters. It's my honor to welcome Congressman Keith Ellison. Thank you for being here. Yes. As I just mentioned, last week's ruling was a critical decision for thousands of Minnesotans. How important is this for Minnesotans, and what does this mean as we prepare for one of the most critical elections this November?
Well, you know, the victory of the Affordable Care Act was a defining victory of our time. We know two things. One is that we can make health care reform in America, something we've been trying to do for 100 years. And two, it's constitutional. Those two things means that not only are we going to get great benefits from the bill we already passed, it means that we can take this good bill and even improve on it. The fact is, because of the success of so many people around the country, starting with our president, we got seniors who get free preventative care. We got 26-year-olds and younger who will be able to stay on their parents. We're covering up taking care of the donut hole. Being a woman is no longer a pre-existing condition. No lifetime caps. So people who cancer treatments don't kick you out and you don't have the thing anymore. So look, you can't even begin to calculate the great benefits to the American people. So all we got to do now is help them understand what's in there.
Well, you've been a fighter, Keith, not just in your time in Congress, but also before that, serving the people of North Minneapolis in the state legislature. You've been a champion for health care for many, many years. You understand what it means to Minnesotans, what it means to the people in the 5th District to have health care, to be able to rely on that. And it's a major accomplishment, so congratulations on all your work over your lifetime to get to this point where now we can at least say we've taken another step forward towards universal health care. As I mentioned, in terms of your commitment to health care reform, defending workers and standing up to voter suppression is immeasurable. What do you think are the most important issues facing Minnesota voters this November outside of health care?
Number one thing is jobs in the economy, good jobs. Not just a gazillion $7 an hour jobs, but good paying quality jobs. That's got to be number one. Number two has got to be trying to make sure that people keep the money that they earn. And that means we got to make sure that we got good, solid consumer protection. That means we got to make sure that people are able to save for retirement. That means that people have got to be able to save enough to send their kids to college. We got to make those things reality. And then, of course, education. Key issue. The reason Minnesota has been a national leader is because we have invested it in the minds of our people. And the fact that we were able to keep college loan interest rates from doubling just this week is a big step forward. The Ryan budget called for allowing the lower interest rate on student loans to expire and double. But we worked together on a bipartisan way to keep them from doubling.
What would the consequences be if voter ID actually passes on the ballot this November? And how do we make sure that voters know just how horrible this would be for the state of Minnesota?
Let me take your second question first. The way we make sure voters know how horrible this is for voters in Minnesota is for every DFLer watching this broadcast to take personal responsibility for getting the word out. Don't be the one saying, why doesn't anybody say anything about voter ID? You say something about voter ID. Talk to your book club, your bowling club, any group, your congregation, the people you know. get the word out. We got some great pull downs on the DFL website, on my website at keithellison.org, that you can just pull those down and just talk about how bad voter ID is. But we need people to take personal responsibility and not say that, well, Ken Martin and Keith Ellison, why aren't they talking about it? They are talking about it, but we need everyone to talk about it. So that's the second question first. Now for the first one, how bad is it? It's devastating to democracy. It literally undermines our right to vote. First of all, it's going to affect about 700,000 Minnesotans. We're a state of about 5 million. That's a lot of people. How? Well, because on any given day, there's at least 30,000 Minnesotans who've lost their ID or need a replacement ID. So if you happen to be one of those who loses your ID or your ID expires shortly before the election, you're out. Also, you got a lot of people don't have an ID, thousands of them. People born at home, people who are in a nursing home. A lot of people choose not to have an ID. There's no rule that they have to have an ID. But see, they can prove who they are with a utility bill, with somebody vouching for them. We're not arguing that you should have to say you are who you say you are. We're just saying this restrictive, photographic, government-issued identification card is more than is necessary and is going to kick people out who have every right to vote.
Well, and I think about this a lot as the guy who ran the last recount here in this state for Governor Dayton. There was millions of dollars spent on each side in litigation, not only during the gubernatorial recount, but as you know, during the Senate recount in 2008. And not one instance, not one single instance, Congressman, of voter fraud was found in either of those recounts after millions of dollars was spent on both sides. You know, the 700,000 people who would be disenfranchised here, low-income individuals, seniors, young people, new immigrants, you name it. These are law-abiding citizens who want to exercise their right to vote. And so what this really is about, they can talk about felons voting all they want. 141 felons voted over the last two election cycles, which is just a minuscule number. And as we talk about this, we're talking about upwards of 700,000 Minnesotans being disenfranchised. In addition to this, and I think most Minnesotans deserve to know what exactly this amendment would do. It would end same-day registration here in this state. It would drastically change the way absentee ballots work, including affecting many of our men and women serving overseas in terms of how the military gets their absentee ballots from the state of Minnesota. So there are a lot of really draconian impacts on this voter ID amendment. And while it might seem common sense to some people that you have to show a photo ID to vote, the reality is that it would cost a lot of people their right to vote in this state, and it's just plain wrong. And we know too what the motivations are from some of these people pushing it, the Koch brothers and the Republicans, that they're trying to make sure that Democratic voters don't vote. And so, but the reality is this is not a partisan issue. This is about an institution in our state and country, a right. This is a right. It's not a privilege, and people should have the right to be able to exercise that without having this burden put in front of them. Right. So you represent one of, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most diverse districts in our state, and certainly one of the most diverse in the country. You also represent one of the most democratic districts in our state here and in the country.
And country.
That's right. But the reality is that there's a lot of work to be done there. And I know, because we've talked about this over the last few months, that there's a tremendous amount of work to get people energized, mobilized, organized, and to get them out to vote. And I know you're spending a lot of time doing that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to get out the vote in Minneapolis and in the 5th District this year?
Absolutely. You'd be happy to know that this year alone, through either door knocks or telephone calls, we have contacted 100,000 people in the 5th Congressional District alone. We are going gangbusters. If you come down to our campaign office, what you will see is a buzzing beehive full of campaign activity, people making calls, people organizing for door knocks, people writing script, people raising money. We are full bore going after it. And the reality is that this is essential not only for the next election, but for our political culture.
Yes.
Our goal is to increase the voter turnout over the last presidential election 5%. Yes. And that means 22,000 brand new people. Between students, new Americans, people who moved into our district, and people who somehow missed the last one, we believe we can do it. We're reaching out to the community of people with disabilities. of some of our great Americans. Franklin Delano Roosevelt couldn't walk, but he took a step forward for America.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we are very proud to have our fellow Americans who are dealing with disabilities, because they have a lot that they're offering and great contributions. As long as I have the privilege to serve in office, and even after, we're going to be campaigning hard, like the elections in 2 weeks, and we're 10 points behind, even though we're not.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I appreciate that, because we've seen too many of our leaders in this state take certain parts of the state for granted, and they haven't done the work of re-engaging and mobilizing Democratic voters, or all voters, to the polls. We have a proud tradition in this state, highest voter turnout in the country. We want to continue that, not just because we want to hold a record, but because we believe it's important to have this robust democracy. And whether you're a Democrat, Republican, an independent, a green, we want people to participate. And so I can't thank you enough for doing that work in the 5th District, because frankly, in my opinion, you really don't need to, but the commitment you have to doing that work is important to all of us. It's important to democracy, so thank you.
Well, I want you to know, we want independents, Greens, and Republicans to participate. You're welcome. We got a big tent. We just say, are you for jobs? Are you for equality for all people? Do you believe we should protect our environment? Right. And if those are the values you hold, we want you with us.
Absolutely. Lastly, my political mentor and hero, Paul Wellstone, used to talk about how we all do better when we all do better. This idea that community really matters, that we should look out for one another regardless of a person's background, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic background. This idea that all of us are part of this community. What's in store for the coming years here? What do you look forward to accomplishing for the people of your district and for the country?
We believe we can have an economy where everybody can go to school, everybody can get a good job. We can make things in America. We can make it in America. We got to have a job program where people are getting the right skills training so that they're ready to do the jobs of now and into the future. This is what we've got to fight for. We believe in a public sector and a private sector working together for the overall well-being of all Minnesotans and Americans.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Congressman, for serving the people of the 5th District, for serving Minnesotans, for serving Americans, serving our party so well, standing up and speaking truth to power, standing up and organizing people, getting people mobilized and organized around the issues that matter. As you mentioned, people matter. And I think in the long run, that's what this election's about. That's what government's about, is that notion that people still do matter. And you've done a great job representing that value in Congress. So I want to thank you for your friendship over the years. Absolutely, thank you for being here. Let's go out and win this year. We're going to need you. We're going to need all the people in the 5th District. And thanks again for being here. And thank you for tuning in again to our weekly message, The Chair's Corner. I hope you'll stop back again next week to hear from another DFL candidate ready to represent us in Washington. Have a great 4th of July weekend.